And so for others, it's about saving green money every day. Whatever your reason, we'll tell you how you can find information and resources to achieve your green goals. In this episode, we're going to find out how your business can become.
Great. Well, we're going to get a briefing update today. This is a joint committee meeting, PHED and T&E, and there's a lot in motion, a lot of enthusiasm about in the wake of COVID-19, the need for people to be out in the streets and to continue to have commerce and to in an environment where people are using the roads somewhat less, see how we can reclaim some of that space for outdoor use and for biking and for walking. And I know Councilmember Hucker has been working hard on this, and Councilmember Friedson has been working hard on this. I believe Councilmember Glass asked us to have a joint committee meeting, which was a great idea. See, we're joined possibly by Councilmember Rice, and he's been this is a you're onto something when everybody is working on it in different ways.
This is the place to be.
Exactly, it's good stuff. So it's been happy. We've been happy to see progress before ensuing. I do want to give a shout out to Allison Gillespie and Christy Daphnis. Allison has been organizing a community campaign to push the county on open streets, and I think that has been successful. We're going to hear about a bunch of new initiatives today that, many of those are ideas that have come out of this community process, and planning and MCDOT have been working together really well. So, there's so much going on here, whether it's urban environments or if it's suburban, like connections between centers through more suburban type neighborhoods, if it's shutting down parkways for longer distance bike trips. There's different elements here, but we are certainly seeing an explosion of interest and use in being outside. I think we're probably all walking more than we've ever walked before. And with that, I'll pass it to my co-chair, Mr. Hucker.
Thank you, Chairman Reamer. I'll refrain, since you have to be here under any circumstance, I'll refrain from asking you which is your favorite committee. We're very glad to be able to explore this topic today. We have representatives of MCDOT, Montgomery Planning, and Montgomery Parks. I think all of us have received a lot of requests from constituents to open up our streets for walking and biking. There's, as the chairman said, more people exercising, more people obviously working from home during the stay-at-home order, and much less traffic. So repurposing, reimagining our rights-of-way for all of our residents, whether they are on a scooter or on foot or on a bike, as well as our drivers, is perfectly appropriate. And I'm really glad to see DOT moving forward with the open streets in Bethesda and Wheaton to facilitate the outdoor dining that has begun there. Sean Emerson in my office has worked closely with State Highway and some of you to get the lanes repurposed on Georgia Avenue for the street dining there. That's been going well, and we're glad to see the neighborhood greenways in Silver Spring and Aspen Hill that are open up in residential areas to promote walking and biking there. And I know there's interest in doing that in a lot of other areas of the county as well. So looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for calling this, Councilmember Glass. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Orland.
Good morning.
Before you start, I think Councilor Friedson wanted to share some comments.
Sure.
And any other
Thank you so. Thank you. Appreciate the joint committee. The fact that we're doing this. This really is about transportation with our roads, but placemaking with our planning. And so I think that it's really appropriate to have a joint committee hearing of PHED and transportation and environment. And to me, this is about streets are for people. And we talk about it a lot. And COVID has proven that government actually can act quickly out of necessity in order to make social distancing easier and help businesses in this particular moment. But to create open streets, shared streets, streeteries, street dines, whatever we want to call them, residents and businesses are loving this. And it's proven that if we build it, they will come, and that government can indeed get the job done and can make this happen, and that the public wants safe, shared streets for people, and that if we provide them, they'll take advantage of them. And they are doing it in droves. I've been almost every day to Bethesda, to the streetery here close to where I live, but also to several of the opportunities all throughout the county to see how they're working. And the reality is they are working great. People are enjoying them, and they're doing it safely, and it's creating a new sense of community and economic activity in so many places, and there's so much more opportunity to do it elsewhere. I look forward to talking more about that. I think one of the best things about this is that we've completely disproven all the reasons why we shouldn't do open streets and why we shouldn't re-engineer roads to be more conducive to walking and biking and to uses for people, and that we actually try to find reasons why we can't do things in government. But if we start with the premise that we are going to do things in government, we can get really amazing things done. So I look forward to this conversation. I hope we can keep doing this. We can keep the momentum alive even after this public health emergency ends, and we won't go back to the status quo searching for no. We'll figure out ways to get to yes, and appreciate all of those involved in and around government who have made this possible and allowed for what is a significant quality of life benefit at this time when we so desperately need it.
Mr. Glass.
Thank you, Chair Reamer and Chair Hucker, for holding this conversation. I thought it was really important for us to have a public conversation about this issue, because I know we've all received the emails and messages and phone calls about saying, let's open up our streets, let's help our small businesses, let's help our restaurateurs, and that's really what has happened here. And one of the things I've been saying about the pandemic over the last number of months is it will force us to rethink the way we operate as a government, as a society, and as a community. And I think this is an exhibit number one about ways that we can change on a dime to facilitate more thriving town communities and support our restaurants in different ways. And ultimately, this conversation is about getting everybody on the same menu so that we can have a public understanding of what's happening throughout the county. And I'll just say that while these efforts have been focusing mostly on our central business districts in down county, as we'll hear, just yesterday, a member of my team was up in Germantown with some other leaders talking about opening up areas in Germantown. And so the demand is out there, and I hope for people who are following this conversation that they will learn that we want to do this in as many places as possible. So I thank the chairs for organizing this conversation.
Well, I think you've triggered our colleague here, Mr. Rice.
Sorry. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairs. And I'm on here specifically to talk about Germantown and some of the concerns I have that when we had this first conversation before, we talked about, because I know the area in Bethesda where we blocked off very well. My wife has a business in Bethesda that's not far from there, and so we frequent it quite often. Residential's not impacted at all, nor is mass transit. You don't have a mass transit line that's there. You don't have a library that's there. You don't have some of our other major businesses that are there that are impacted by this. Unfortunately, in Germantown, where our town center is located, is primarily inside of a residential area. So it's surrounded by complete residential. In Bethesda, you have some residential that's built on top, but they have parking garages, right? We don't have that same ability, and so it makes it easier for folks to still access based on that. And so I love the concept. I think it's incredibly important. I wish we could accomplish something like that, but I'm very concerned about some of the challenges that we face, including the impact on residential and the fact that it's a major traffic thoroughfare for us as well. I was just there last night, so I missed you, Councilmember Glass. I was picking up food at our Germantown Town Center, dropping off a package at the FedEx there, and it was incredibly busy. It's 7 o'clock in the evening. Folks were eating, folks were dining, folks were doing takeout. I'm concerned about Uber Eats and Grubhub and where those folks would go and how they would access. I'm concerned about those folks who still aren't comfortable with being able to access the restaurants and sit outside with folks who are immunocompromised, who want to just pick up food and have curbside access, and what they would then do and how they would be able to access some of these restaurants. That's the concern that I have, because, again, it's just the setup of how Century Boulevard is that makes it not as conducive as an area like where we've set up in Bethesda for our streetery concept. And so just wanted to put that out there, because I do agree with the concept of having the Black Rock area. It's always about making things work for different kinds of areas. So when it comes to Black Rock, that's not being utilized right now, that probably won't be utilized for a very long time, and Black Rock's already open to the idea, that makes more sense for us, instead of trying to push a concept on an area that's really not prepared for it, nor are the vendors. Some of the restaurants have already expressed that they are not interested in doing it. And so that also is a concern as well. So just wanted to put all that out there. I appreciate it. And I appreciate Councilmember Glass. Thank you so much for your staff, you coming out and taking a look at it. It's important. And I really want to talk about equity, because it's important for us to look at ways in which we can still try and do it in areas of the Up County. But unfortunately, in what we've looked at so far, and as the district council member, let me just tell you, we're going to open up more problems than we will have solutions for a lot of our restaurants. And I think that a concept of a streetery idea, but more on the lawn of Black Rock, may make more sense, especially as we look to open up our library there. And I know that we have our lead for libraries, Councilmember Juando, who just joined. The access, the main access for that is off of Century Boulevard. Our folks who come from Clarksburg are not going to always know to take the back way to go into the library. There is another way you can access the library, through back roads, but that would require huge amounts of signage as well. So that would require our transportation department to reroute folks through other neighborhoods to get them to the back end. And that's going to be a challenge as well. So from that perspective, I really think that's the best way for us to move forward, and just wanted to put that out there at the beginning of this discussion. So thank you guys, and thank you guys for all of your hard work. Appreciate it.
Okay. Dr. Orland?
Thank you. I think I'm on. Yeah. Just the structure of the morning, we're going to start with a briefing from Emma Willan, the Deputy Director of DOT, and Hannah Henn, who's the Senior Engineer for Strategic Innovation for DOT, followed by a presentation by Darren Flouchet of the Parks Department, each talking about, respectively, DOT and Parks Open Streets activities over the last month or so, and what's planned to come forward. And finally, some comments from Christy Daphnis, who's the chair of the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. We also have on the call Andre Futrell, who's the State Highway Administrator's District 3 engineer, to talk about how State Highway is coordinated if he's called upon as a resource person. Casey Anderson, of course, from the Planning Board, and Dave Ansbacher from the Planning Department are all available for you. So with that, we start perhaps with Mr. Willan and Ms. Henn.
Thank you, Glenn. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Director Conklin was not able to join. He went and quarantined himself over at the Greenbrier for a couple days with his family. Personally, I think he's inspecting the bunker, but we'll leave it at that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Before we get into the shared streets, I just want to take an opportunity. I would be remiss, since this is about the response to COVID. Let me just take a moment and share some love for the DOT employees that have done so much through this response to the pandemic. Particularly, I want to call on our ride-on bus operators. You know, at the onset of this endeavor, we went through multiple iterations of scaling back ride-on service to get to just an essential capability, and now we're starting to kind of ramp it back up. Workforce availability has been an issue for us, but it's been amazing how our bus drivers have responded. You know, they're out there at risk. We did some things, suspended fare collection, put up the chains on the bus, rear door motor only, to make them comfortable and safe. That has alleviated a lot of the concerns But going forward, as more people are starting to ride transit now, we have some bigger challenges ahead of us in trying to get back to the point where we are collecting fares. So we're working with McGeo, exploring bus barricades or barriers for the drivers that will help them even long-term in terms of operators' thoughts that we sometimes encounter. So again, we're extremely proud of our staff in DOT, their response to this overall, as well as the creativity as it relates to shared streets. Let me just take a moment to introduce the topic, and I'm going to turn things over to Hannah Henn, who has been one of our main driving forces behind this approach that we've come for. As Councilmember Friedson mentioned, the streets belong to the public. We're merely the stewards of them, and we're trying to adjust our use and adaptation to the today's needs. But this is our approach to making the streets more walkable, bikeable, and to help support economic recovery for the restaurants. This is, I will mention, it's an iterative and evolving approach. This is somewhat akin to like flying an airplane while you're still building it. We are figuring out things as we go along. We are trying to plagiarize from other jurisdictions that have done a variety of these things. We're trying some things on our own. We are learning as we go along. So how this sticks long term, or the directions that everything is up for discussion and for evolving. One of the important things in this overall endeavor has been, the partnership approach that has come to bear with ourselves, with Park and Planning, with Andre. So I want to give a shout out to Casey Wainwright, Mike Riley from Park and Planning Commission, Andre Futrell and his team over at State Highway. I'll just take a moment and, as Councilmember Rice pointed out, the work up in Germantown, we have heard some response from businesses up there that don't want to see this on Century Boulevard, how it would affect their pickup business. So, the approach, what we're trying to bring to bear is a context-sensitive approach. It may be different in different settings. Maybe it's not the street, maybe it's some open space that's nearby that can be used for dining. But, we want to provide an approach that is appropriate for the setting that we're in. It's been easier to do this with down in Bethesda in Silver Spring, for example. Also, I would be remiss in not recognizing the Bethesda Urban Partnership for the collaborative approach that we brought to bear in Bethesda itself. So with that in mind, let me introduce Hannah Henn. Hannah is our acting manager for strategic communications in DOT, and she has been spearheading this approach working with our division. So let me turn it over to Hannah and let her take it and then wow you all with this.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. I'd actually like permission to share my screen, please, if possible, from the host.
It will be granted. It might take a second here.
Okay.
Hope Michelle Parsons or Nick Berry has heard that.
Okay. Yep. I see I have permission now. Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I think we've had a pretty good overview so far. I'll try to get through this quickly because Dr. Orland indicated that the goal here is really to allow you all to ask questions. So shared streets, as you've heard, we've had a lot of collaboration. And in the packet, you will have seen that this kind of started, DOT really jumped on this idea at the very beginning of the health crisis. Our policy work group, which has representatives from all divisions in DOT, did research on what was happening across the country. We followed really closely kind of the people the cities who jumped on this quickly, like Oakland. And Director Conklin had us investigate to see if we had specific problems that we could solve in Montgomery County. Really from that investigation, we found that changing the use of the curbside was our most urgent need, and we did that right away on March 17th, established the curbside pickup and drop-off zones. And also for outdoor recreational use, our investigation found that the parkways would be the most suited to implement quickly, and we were really glad to see Montgomery Parks jump on that. And so After that point, we developed an open space action plan with partnership with Montgomery Planning. Our team worked together with Montgomery Planning to really think about how we could identify problems and think through them in a way where we established a set of kind of decision criteria where we could look at the entire county, really think about equity in any of the decisions that we make, and that resulted in a framework for thinking about developing open streets. And so from that effort with planning, and planning connected us with staff at parks to hear their lessons learned for opening their parkways, which was really helpful. We heard kind of what worked, what didn't, how they reached out to the community, improvements they made as they went along. It's really been a great collaborative effort, and we've all been supporting each other. So we developed the program Shared Streets, which we launched on May 29th. So one of the first things that we did is, since we can't do a traditional public outreach and community engagement, we, in addition to putting out information on social media and through press releases, we initiated a survey to try to hear from residents and businesses what they actually want. So we have had a really robust response from residents, not as robust from businesses. And despite putting the survey out in English and Spanish and going on Montgomery Al Dia to reach the Spanish-speaking community by radio, putting out all of our press releases and flyers in Spanish and English, we really haven't had much of a response to the Spanish language survey yet. And we're going to keep that survey open through the end of this month so that we'll have a full month of data. But our preliminary findings, you'll see here, we asked people to identify the residents where they live. And so you'll see Silver Spring, Bethesda, and Wheaton have been the top represented respondents. And they're most supportive of creating connections to places, followed by outdoor business activity. And so from this, interactions with elected officials, the advocacy organizations that were referenced earlier, led by Allison Gillespie and others, and also the response that we've heard through our surveys, we developed this three-pronged approach. As Emil said, it's iterative. We're learning as we go. None of this, everything is subject to change if we can find ways to improve. So you'll see we're focusing on outdoor dining, on-street walking and biking, and then our newest program, which just launched last Friday, is our block permit program. So as I mentioned, we opened up curbs for pickup and delivery access on March 17th. That is, I believe, is now serving 41 locations. And that we, started that initially, and as restaurants come to us and make requests, we have increased locations over time. Outdoor dining, this is a view of Woodmont Avenue in Bethesda. This was taken last weekend. You'll see there is restaurant activity in the street. Restaurants have their own tables out in the street, as well as the red tables you see in the background with the gentleman in the red shirt who's doing cleanup, works for BUP and is out there helping to keep things clean and organized. This was something I saw last weekend. So this area was the first to open, the Bethesda Streetery, in 2 locations. It opened on June 9th. This was fantastic to see people biking right up to their table and parking their bikes right at their tables. We are also in discussions, DOT, over whether we could provide bike racks to improve these spaces. But for now, bike up dining is available. Here is a view of the Silver Spring Street Dine on Georgia Avenue, which is an SHA road and was done in partnership with NCDOT supported SHA in this closure to vehicles, opening to people, This launched on June 12th. June 19th, this past Friday, Wheaton launched its first streetery. This was the setup of the Wheaton Streetery early that morning. Here are some of the restaurants, both in Silver Spring and Wheaton, who are located along these streetery locations. There's been a lot of discussion about Germantown, so I won't go into that any further, but I will say I walked the streets on Wheaton and Silver Spring over the weekend, and the outpouring of positive feedback from restaurants was really incredible and very heartwarming, and made all of the late nights feel worth it. Here is a view of opening night in Wheaton on Elkin Street. And then I'll move into some discussion of our on-street walking and biking programs. This was our first closure that happened along Arlington Road. And something that I just want to mention is that at DOT, I think we often talk about our implementation efforts. And I want to point out that our implementation, here you see the people who are out there putting out the traffic control devices, which is very important for public safety, but it is about our implementation efforts involve so much more than that. We have planners, engineers, we have people with graphic design capabilities. We're working with our Vision Zero partners, and so many people go into actually getting to this point where we can put traffic control devices out on the street. Arlington Road was first, and this is, I think, a good example of how DOT is trying to think strategically on how the closures and roadway adjustments that we make, that they can provide added value. So we're really thinking, can we open up, can we create connections, can we serve dense population areas, can we find areas that have lacking existing infrastructure, where can we connect people to activity centers or trails. So the Arlington Road closure is not particularly long, but it connected downtown Bethesda to the Little Falls Parkway closure by Parks. And so this, what you see in the upper left-hand side might not look like much, but on the lower left-hand, that's the Arlington Road closure, and on the right-hand side, you'll see Little Falls Parkway. So it's really created a lot of connectivity. Moving forward, our focus is on neighborhood greenways rather than complete street closures, because not many of DOT's streets are conducive to closure. So you'll see here what we're calling the Aspen Hill Temporary Neighborhood Greenway, which is based off of the 2018 Bike Master Plan Aspen Hill Neighborhood Greenway that is in final design now. Dr. Orland was the first to point out to me that where we actually implemented this is in Glenmont Hills and not actually Aspen Hill, because we implemented the southern portion of that entire planned route. So that was a lesson learned. We, built off of something we were already designing, and we have, heard from the community that the naming of this was not ideal. So we can learn from that going forward. But the reaction to the actual implementation has been very positive. You'll see Director Conklin on the left, and one of our planners, Kyle Lucas, who is overseeing the long-term changes to the street on the right. Here we have Grove Street in Silver Springs. So the first Aspen Hill location was implemented on June 15th. This one happened last Thursday on the 18th, where we have roads closed to through traffic, so residents can still get into the neighborhood. Delivery vehicles can still get in, but we're trying to make drivers, we slow them by placing that traffic control signage in the right-hand lane, and also make them aware that there are different uses being welcomed into the street. We have the sandwich boards. You saw sandwich boards. There's one that has a map. We have these, when we set them up, we have them at every intersection with a map of the greenway, a red dot where you are located, and some guidelines as to safe use and what's an appropriate use in the street. This was a costly endeavor, and we were able to do these two locations so quickly because they are existing CIP projects for the long-term plans for the neighborhood greenway. So our team is thinking and trying to be as creative as possible going forward to come up with different solutions that might be more cost-effective, so that we can do as many of these as possible. And so for now, we have these two locations, so we are thinking carefully and have worked through and identified some upcoming potential locations where we think there would be a lot of benefit. And this slide gets to, this was an event that we had last Friday. We were not able to invite anybody to the event other than the media because we were still in phase one, where we couldn't have more than 10 people congregate. But who you see here, just to really show you how many people, this is just some of the people at DOT who have been working on shared streets from all aspects. And so we went out on Friday to kind of share what we were doing, and everyone brought their families and kids, and we activated the street to demonstrate safe behavior. We talked to neighbors who came out asking questions, and it was really, really a wonderful experience. And just want to acknowledge how much work has gone into this. I actually spoke with a reporter yesterday who asked me if this is so easy to do and we can do it so quickly, why isn't DC acting faster? And I told that reporter that, you know, this really is not easy. It might come off as looking easy, but this has involved a lot of dedication and late nights, and the DOT team really believes in this work. And so the last thing I want to mention is that last Friday we launched our third prong of our current plan, the Shared Streets Block Permit application. And I'm now just going to pull that up. So the concept of that was, since this summer will not be conducive to the traditional block party, here's our website. And by the way, up here on the right-hand side are the survey buttons that are still live in English and Spanish that we, suggest that anybody take advantage of. So here are the three kind of main themes. Shared Streets Block Permit is our solution or our recommended approach to an alternative to block parties, because this is a summer where we're not going to encourage congregation, moon bounces out in streets, close activity among neighbors. So any resident, if you don't, the idea here is that if you don't live near a neighborhood greenway, any resident in the entire county can apply for a block permit application. We, similar to all of our efforts across the county, particularly with outdoor dining, we try to make the application as simple as possible. You essentially fill in your name, where you live, and then you must actually live on the block that you're requesting to close. That's that's really the only requirement. And then you may choose either Monday through Thursday closure or Friday to Sunday. So this is, at least to start, because this is iterative, this is a one-time closure request. And DOT, so there's no cost to apply for the permit. Also, there's no cost to set it up. In a traditional block party program, residents are required to provide their own traffic cones and signage. DOT will come out with the traffic control devices, set these up, ensure that they are safe. We also have developed a training. The advocacy organizations who have been trying to support this effort have agreed to help us with being our eyes on the street. So our engineering team has developed a training program for volunteers to go out and circulate around these areas and make sure that the traffic control devices are in place. We're spray painting a dot on the street where they go, and they have agreed, and we might also engage the COVID Corps to make sure that all of these devices are remaining in place, because we are limited in terms of our staffing availability to get out. The last thing I think I wanted to mention but didn't is that the outdoor dining is about much more than DOT. We're working with permitting, alcohol and beverage services, police, fire. It's a really large, comprehensive team, and we're all working together, and that's a really big collaborative effort as well. And I will end there. Thanks.
Terrific. Should we hear from planning?
We hear from Darren Flouché from Parks now, I believe.
Darren?
I have permission to share my screen. Yes, I do. Okay. Great. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to go today remotely. My name is Darren Flouché, the Trails Master Planner and Trails Program Supervisor for Montgomery Parks. And I would just provide a little bit of an update on our Open Parkway initiative. Talk about our count system and the lessons that we've learned as we've been going through. Hopefully folks have gotten a chance to experience one of our segments. Our story begins at the very beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak. We very quickly realized that folks were clamoring for more opportunities to go outside, and that we also had an already fairly constrained trail system. So you can see here, this is maybe a little bit hard to read. The red line is temperature, and that varies, and the blue line is precipitation. And then the green bars are the actual trail use that we see on our permanent trail counter on the Capitol Crescent Trail. And so you can see that as COVID started unfolding and we became more and more aware of the health crisis, and there was a state of emergency declared, and social distancing and non-essential businesses were closed, what we saw was an increase in our trail usage during that period. We started hearing a lot of questions about, is it safe to use our trails? What can we do to provide more opportunities for more to get outside? And indeed, we saw a 40% increase in our trail use on that location during that period compared to the year prior. So already popular trails seeing more use. So we leapt into action essentially and wanted to provide more people opportunities to get physical activity while providing physical distance from one another and relieve pressure on our most highly used trails, which all happen to have parallel adjacent parkways. So we started early on with expanding our existing open Sunday parkway on Sligo, and that was on April 3rd. So we went from Sunday only to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then the following weekend, we extended what we're calling the northern section of Sligo, north of the Beltway. And then on April 17th, we expanded that open parkways to Beach Drive and Little Falls Parkway. So, acting very quickly with this expansion of temporal expansion and geographic expansion to provide as much opportunity for people to get outside in a safe manner as possible, as quickly as possible. So, we've gotten really good use, really positive feedback, a lot of smiling faces, a lot of them under masks, but you can see from the eyes, people are happy, and providing opportunities for social distancing. I do want to emphasize, as Hannah did, this has been a really huge team effort. Folks from the Park and Planning Board directors all the way to our exhibit shop working on creative stencils for us, and of course our partners at MCDOT with the Arlington Road closure. It's been extremely good to work with and collaborative. It's been an all hands on deck effort, starting with this gentleman, this stranger that I just happened to meet at Little Falls Parkway. Mike Riley. This is not a photo shoot. We just happen to both be out there at the same time, enjoying the parkway. It's been really important for us to monitor the use of our trails and parkways during COVID to understand what is going on and what is the use of this space. And so we have 6 counting locations where we're counting both the trail usage and the parkway usage at the same point, so we can monitor the relationship between those two, and I'll go through some of the results quickly on that. We made a really quick investment in some infrared sensors to be able to do this. So I was asked early on, before I looked at the data, where the most parkway use was, and I'll tell you each of those colors is a different set of parkway locations. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to think and make a guess to yourself about where we're seeing the most use. I was surprised that the answer was Beach Drive on the left, Little Falls Parkway in the middle, and Sligo on the right. But each of those saw tens of thousands of users in the month of May alone. Some quick data on Memorial Day weekend. Usage is correlated with day of the week, where the weekends tend to see more use than Fridays, and with weather. So you can see this particular Friday before Memorial Day was raining and 66 degrees, and the rest of the weekend was warmer and brighter and saw more use accordingly. And then one of the key questions we asked was, what's the relationship between the parkway usage and the trail usage? And it's been really interesting to monitor the different locations. We have different results. So I mentioned Beach Drive being our most popular parkway. Well, it sucked a lot of the use off of the trail in this case. Whereas at Capitol Crescent Trail and Little Falls Parkway, Capitol Crescent Trail being our most highly used trail, retained a lot of use, but didn't see the peaks that we had seen prior to our open parkway. So we're able to reduce the max volumes on our trails while accommodating thousands of people each day on our parkway. Then you have Sligo at Dennis, pretty even usage between the trail and the parkway, and Sligo at Piney Branch seeing more trail use. So we're thinking about what are the different dynamics between these things and what can we do to spread out the usage a little bit more. Touch on some of those a little bit. Just continued, high levels of use through the first 2 weeks of June. We have the data collected for now. You see ongoing high levels of use Saturdays and Sundays being very popular. Conclusions from that: tens of thousands of users accommodated. There's some design and communication questions about letting people know that the parkway is available in places where it's not visible from the trail. Weather matters. Volumes vary across locations, but they tend to trend together. So if you see a lower one trail or parkway on a Friday, that's probably going to be the case on all of the trails and parkways based on weather and day of the week. And we're seeing that this high use supports the anecdotal evidence that we've gotten from really positive feedback that we've heard from users of the open parkways. So it's nice to have that validation from both directions. That said, we've learned a lot of lessons. We got out of the gate quickly, and we've been making modifications and adjustments since. So some of the lessons: more messages on the trails to help people know about the parkway, more messaging to encourage physical distancing. And then a lot of adjustments to actual barriers and our gates, and I'll get more into that, and lessons about our signage. For example, our maps were just too small at first, so we had to go back to the drawing board and make bigger maps. So as part of that attempt to improve our social distancing messages, we use athletic field paint, and our sign shop made stencils with sayings like "Don't stand so close to me," and "No trailgating," and "Do your part, stay 6 feet apart." We had some celebrity spottings on the stenciling. We very quickly learned that the orange and the blue and the pink were not as visible, so we moved away from those and used them primarily as accent colors to make sure that everybody could read our signs clearly. And that kind of accessibility has been an important focus during our Parkways initiative, with a big focus on the gates. You can see this gate, it was designed to keep cars out, not to let people through. So we've done a lot of work on universal design. The benefit of that is as a new father who's pushing a stroller and somebody that broke his knee last year, universal design is just good design for all of our users. And so we've done some experimenting with short-term improvements, but ultimately retrofitting our gates is going to be the key here. So just to give a few examples, Connecticut Ave Beach Drive, this is the before condition where folks were walking in the mud to get around the gates. This particular gate actually closed off a new trail segment when it was closing the parkway. So our first quick action was to put gravel down.
I'm the only one that can't.
Yeah, I don't hear anything either.
We lost audio.
Casey and Company, we're not hearing you.
And our expert welder. Another example is Old Carroll. This was a challenging closure for years, where because of constrained topography, folks had to often get off their bikes, walk it around, or even pass their bikes over the gate. So this was our interim condition or interim fix. With this gate design, we were able to do a staggered gate without fear of impaling users, though it was a temporary fix because we were concerned about tampering over the long term as those little concrete fill buckets were not unmovable. So then our next stage, the current condition is this nice.
Losing you again. Need to spend more on FiberNet.
I think Park and Planning needs a new building.
Yeah, well, that's it.
It's a good thing we're on that.
Done.
Oh, there you go.
Did I freeze?
Yeah, you've frozen once or twice so far.
Okay. Where? Let's see. Am I good now?
We're good.
Okay. So this is the video. I don't know if that causes a freeze. Folks saw that.
The videos could be the problem, actually.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll move away from that. And the good news is I'm at the end. And so we, as was mentioned early on, we really look forward to finding opportunities to continue the Open Parkways program. Our intention is to use the summer to do public engagement and look forward to what the next iteration of this may be.
Terrific.
I just wanted to pick up on that and say we are looking at ways to make these parkway closures permanent on the weekend. We will run a public process probably, at some point in late July to get to the planning board a decision on that and give people an opportunity to weigh in, because we anticipate that, by the time September rolls around, that will be the relevant time frame. So to look at what's the long-term future of these closures. We have also been asked if there's additional parkways we could close. I think we've concluded that probably the answer is no, because we have studied all the driveway access, emergency vehicle access, bus routes, all those issues, and have really tried to find as many places we can that can be closed without causing major disruptions. Unfortunately, I think we're about at the outer limit of that, but I do think that we'll be able to at least maintain the weekend closures permanently going past September. The other thing I would just mention is that, I wanted to highlight that we've had so much support from so many people. Councilmember Reamer had asked us and DOT to look at this carefully early in the process. We got a lot of support from all the members of the PHED committee in P&E. All of our electeds have been nothing but helpful and encouraging, including state legislators who've been calling me, asking me about what they can do to help. We are submitting some of these expenses for the gate retrofit for reimbursement from FEMA, and we think that there's a good argument that we should get it. So that would be nice if those permanent gate fixes would be paid out of the source other than county's funds. So we're always trying to be attentive to where we might be able to either save money or at least become eligible to pay for some of this from federal or other funding sources. And the last thing I want to say is, you all know Dave Ansbacher and what a fantastic mind he has, and the skill set that he displayed. He's been on the front of the council many times. I think you see where Darren is a worthy counterpart to him of the Parks Park. We picked him up from school design. He has a long background in working in bike and pedestrian planning and bicycle advocacy. And I think you see his use of data is exactly the direction that I've been trying to push everybody in both sides of the parks and planning side to use data to understand and support decision making. And I think his presentation is a great example of how some very basic but not necessarily easy steps that you take early on to measure how much usage there was before, how much use there is given weather conditions or days of the week, allows you to understand what's going on, help you make better decisions, and also justify decisions that we make prospectively about things like Parkway closures and many more things. The last thing I'll say is to Craig Rice, we have some ideas about how to use the parks as an extension of the Streetery program, and you'll hear more about that, I think, in the next few weeks. But we are very focused on helping restaurants that are near parks to give them more space for people to go out and eat. And we're also talking about maybe some programming that would encourage people to go out to eat in places like Germantown or downtown Silver Spring or Bethesda and gather in the park. So we'll hope to have something more detailed to give you on that in the next couple weeks.
That's terrific. I know Craig had to jump to another call. If we do get into Germantown's, vision for this area, we'll ask him to come back. He offered to come back, so he's on another call at the second. Great. I think our next is it Ms. Daphnis? Christy, I'm not hearing you. I think you're getting a little audio feedback from your headset. Okay, that's better.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, great. My headset was messing with it.
Did you like my diagnosis?
Good morning.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. My home office setup is a little crunched around here with 2 kids and a husband all working from home, and it's not a big space, so apologies.
I'm sure it's the husband feeling the problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chairs Reamer and Hucker, for allowing me to participate in the briefing this morning. I really appreciate it. This morning, I'm representing both the Montgomery County Pedestrian, Bike, and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, as well as the Open Streets Coalition. The Open Streets Coalition is a loosely affiliated group of organizations working to promote open and shared streets across Montgomery County. Participants include WABA, Montgomery County Sierra Club, Action Committee for Transit, Coalition for Smarter Growth, along with several individuals and civic associations. I know that some of you are familiar with this coalition, but just to kind of review, the goals of the Open Streets Coalition are threefold. First, to enhance availability of safe outdoor recreation activities and reduce exposure to traffic threats on our Montgomery County streets and roadways during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. Second, to promote commerce activity by providing better pedestrian and bicycle access, as well as outdoor and socially distanced dining space for businesses and restaurants across the county. And third, to advocate for better connectivity between commerce and employment centers through bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and to promote alternatives to car-based trips while transit is running at reduced capacity. As a group, we've been thoroughly impressed with the collaboration and the action-oriented posture of Montgomery Planning, Montgomery Parks, and the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, as well as the State Highway Administration. We appreciate the responsiveness to our coalition and the willingness to solicit input from the broader public, particularly under the difficult circumstances and limited resources during this time of crisis. We definitely wholeheartedly support the efforts to date, including the closure of parkways, the rapid deployment of neighborhood greenways, the abbreviated permitting process to accommodate neighborhood street closure requests, and lane closures both on state and county roadways in certain business districts to support streeteries and open air dining opportunities. Our Open Streets Coalition also recognizes, as noted in the briefing packet and in the testimony that we've heard, that physical distancing and business recovery are iterative and rapidly evolving, and county agencies need to be thinking ahead to pivot to pilot projects and innovative solutions as issues arise. As you know, as a county, we're now embarking on the reopening process and moving through the reopening phases. Residents, many who've been socially distancing for months within the confines of their home or in their neighborhood, will soon face many decisions on how they choose to interact more broadly as the county, the state, and the country begin down a path of returning to work, school, and other daily activities. It will be a new paradigm as residents begin to return to normal while social distancing and other mitigation measures remain in place. Within that context, Montgomery County residents will face many challenges. Currently, Metro and both bus systems, Beaumont and Ride-On, are running at greatly diminished levels. And officials who manage mass transit have reported that it will take anywhere from 2 months to a year to get their systems back to full capacity with all routes and stations open for passengers. As the state reopens for business, we see that getting people from one place to another in a safe, healthy way will become a special challenge. We think that providing the following alternatives could help provide realistic ways for bikes, e-bikes, and perhaps even scooters to fill some of the transportation gap while we wait for the return of full transit options. Critically, the open streets investments could advance existing county policies for Vision Zero, the Bicycle Master Plan, and the Pedestrian Master Plan. With this shift in mind, we are asking that the Council, Montgomery Parks, Montgomery Planning, DOT, and the State Highway Administration begin to look toward the future. I know that you're already doing some of that, but specifically, it would be helpful to add projects across the county focusing on the following two principles, which really go hand in hand. First of all, connectivity. It's imperative that we look for opportunities to apply the open streets and shared streets concepts to better connect our businesses and employment centers via safe, convenient, and direct bicycle routes. We need to promote greater connectivity for bicyclists and pedestrians and make it safer for those who don't want to drive or don't have access to a car to make trips throughout Montgomery County by walking or bicycle. I would note that while the Greenway program will promote connectivity, it seems like the current iteration of the new permitting process may not achieve this goal on interior neighborhood streets in the current way that it's set up. Second, we need to think about elevating bicycle and pedestrian activity from recreation to transportation. We're at a very unique inflection point in which county residents are seeking alternatives to car trips and are also looking for new alternatives to supplement transit. We have an opportunity to introduce residents to these alternatives in a safe and beginner-friendly manner. With the right infrastructure in place, a casual bicyclist may be willing to make a bicycle trip to work or to other places and other parts of routines of his or her day. These could be work trips or shorter ones to buy groceries, visit the doctor, connect with trails, or do other errands. To that end, along with the continuation of the three-phased approach outlined in the county briefing documents, we request that the council, along with other county agencies and the SHA, consider investments in projects over the next 4 months that do the following. First, think about a program, maybe call it the COVID-19 or the COVID-19 miles. We're asking that the county and state engage in projects that utilize traffic lanes along state highways and other major roadways to safely connect residents to destinations. These projects would include an emphasis on highways that connect business district and employment centers with a focus on transportation as opposed to recreation. We would envision these to be corridor-based solutions with an analysis of equity, reasonable commuting distances, and commuting patterns of residents. We've included a list of approximately 19 miles of roadway that present possible opportunities, along with some rationale, and plan to send this request to the State Highway Administration, the Council, and MCDOT.
Great.
These suggested road segments include University Boulevard from Colesville to Beers Mill Road, approximately 3 miles. Beers Mill to Matthew Henson Trail, approximately 3 miles. Frederick Road from Germantown Road to Middlebrook Road, approximately 1 mile. Piney Branch Road from Sligo Creek Parkway to New Hampshire Avenue, approximately 1.5 miles. Old Georgetown Road from I-95 to Executive Boulevard, approximately 2.5 miles. Georgia Avenue from Norbeck to Olney Sandy Spring Road, approximately 3.5 miles. Georgia Avenue from 16th Street to I-495 overpass to Colesville Road, approximately 1.5 miles. And last, East-West Highway from Georgia Avenue to Connecticut Avenue, approximately 3.2 miles. We understand that SHA may want to pilot this concept of partial closure to cars, and also understand that there are many resource constraints and other things that would go into such a project. But we do believe that the stretch on University Boulevard may be a good place to start, as it's manageable, discreet, and would connect the Wheaton CBD with the Sligo Parkway and neighborhoods east of the Parkway. Second, we ask that all of you look at commuting alternatives and resident incentives, potentially considering whether there are opportunities to support grants or other incentives directly to residents to promote commuting alternatives, including bicycles, e-bicycles, scooters, and other modes of transportation. As we approach Maryland and Montgomery County's Phase 3 response and beyond, demand for alternatives will become increasingly important. And lastly, we ask that you look at commuting alternatives and educational opportunities for residents. I know educational opportunities that we've engaged in the past through DOT have been related specifically to pedestrian safety and some of those types of things. But we ask that you think about providing additional information and resources to novice bicyclists and trail users to educate residents on safe bicycle routes, trail connections, and educational materials on non-automobile commuting alternatives. This could include bike maps, rules of the road, bike parking information, trail rules, and basic information and guides on how to get started in planning these alternative commuting arrangements. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss our ideas with you this morning. I look forward to further engagement with both the Council as well as the county and state agency leadership to help further these very important goals and principles. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hucker, kick to you. Mr. Friedson wanted to speak, and
thank you so much, Christy. You might want to put your mic back on. Thanks for all your hard work and all the members of the committee for giving us for the work you do behind the scenes all the time and all the guidance you are able to give us in public like this. Can I just follow up on what you said about? Can you elaborate on why the permitting process won't allow the Greenway program to achieve its goals? Why it's more cumbersome than it needs to be?
So I think in the discussions that we've had with MCDOT, when we talked about the permitting process, we talked about thinking through how residents could use that new permitting process to connect their neighborhood to other areas, and to use it as an actual, pathway to something. And I think based on what I heard Hannah say, you have to live on the block that you're requesting. And I didn't hear her mention the email address that would allow residents to email in suggestions for connection points on interior residential streets. So the Greenway program, I think, is great, and it does provide a lot of connectivity. I think what we were hoping to do with that neighborhood residential program was to take it one step further and get a little bit more interior into some of the neighborhoods. It's I think the way that it sounds like, and I don't have the details, so I'm sorry. I'm just basing this on what I heard in Hannah's presentation. It sounds more like the ability to close off one block for a period of time, which might not achieve that full objective while it comes, a start to what we need.
Although if neighbors were to organize one resident, they would have to organize one resident per block in order to achieve the sort of linear connectivity you're talking about to get like a 5-block corridor open to allow them to travel easily, safely to another neighborhood or something. Is that accurate?
Right. May I respond to Christy's concern? So, Christy, I hear what you're saying. I didn't speak to it, but in one of my first slides, I did share our email address, and we still have that email address. I'm monitoring it every day, and we welcome people to continue sending us ideas. And when I was out on the street speaking with restaurant owners, I tell everyone about the email address. I ask them to send us feedback. I say, as the summer goes on, if you have suggestions for improvements, please reach out. The block permit program is geared more towards small closures. That doesn't mean that neighborhoods can't still come to us with other ideas and that we wouldn't consider those. But those are the idea there is that you present an idea and we can respond quickly and approve you quickly and get you in the streets quickly. And the more complicated those requests become, the harder it is for us to allow people to activate their streets really quickly. So the goal of that permit application is to be very simple and fast. We intentionally, and there are guidelines, if you look at it and click on the guidelines, we intentionally did not give a maximum length. So you can request longer than a block. We're calling it a block because if people apply for a block, we can approve it more quickly and it can happen without a long wait. But I just want to be clear that we are still open to all sorts of suggestions, and we have an entire team that is meeting repeatedly and also continuing to collaborate with planning on these longer greenway type concepts.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Sorry if I misinterpreted some of what I heard, so thanks.
Very much a work in progress, right?
Yeah, and Tom, if I can add on to that, one of the reasons we're looking for the request to come from the residents, like many of our other programs that we offer to residential areas, speed humps, parking restrictions that are not safety related, access restrictions, we're looking to work directly with the community that is actually affected. The residents that live on these residential streets are going to have to modify their access practices. So we want them to be engaged from the get-go. That's why that request is there. So somebody like Emil doesn't come in and request a series of closures to get me to Silver Spring that nobody else can utilize. So we're trying to work cooperatively with the neighborhoods and communities involved.
No, that all makes sense. And Christy, I love your other idea, that just the point of using lanes for transportation, looking at bike and PHED is transportation strategies, not just recreation, looking at lane closures in certain places to connect the business districts. So I'd love to work with you on that. Back to you, Mr.
I'll of course send you that list that I read off, and perhaps we can use that to launch a discussion with Andre and others at SHA.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, let's follow up with your recommendations, share them with all of the agencies, and we can evaluate them. We can ask DOT and Park and Planning and the state to evaluate them. Thank you. Glenn, are we also getting a presentation from the state? Is this? I know Andrew has questions.
Yeah, and Andre is here if you have any questions.
He's here as a resource if we have questions. Okay.
Right.
Andrew Freed.
So the formal presentations are done. Great. So now it's just Q&A.
Great. Andrew.
Appreciate that. This is a lot of great information here. I learned a lot of new things and got a chance to see how the data is behind, the anecdotes. I've been on beach in Little Falls every weekend and can see how folks are taking advantage of it, but it was interesting to see the data related to it and the trails. And in fact, Councilmember Glass and I had a socially distanced walk on Little Falls several weeks ago. I think one of the first weeks, maybe the first weekend it was open, in fact, and we were about 10, 15 feet apart, trying to talk loudly through our masks so we could hear each other. And of course, Councilmember Glass, I turned and he was no longer talking to me because one of his husband's colleagues spotted him, a famous person on the trail, and I got to see the hardworking staff in the Parks Department who are doing a terrific job there. But we talk a lot about pedestrian and bike safety, and that streets are for people. And what we've seen here is not just about safety; it's about quality of life and economic development. And I think Ms. Daphne's point about the transportation piece, and as we talk about the streeteries and the street dines. There's tremendous economic interests here as well, and placemaking opportunities as well. And on the Arlington piece, I did just want to note that there was some concerns the first weekend when Arlington was closed about the neighborhood Kenwood Forest onto Arlington, and Mr. Paler and the team did an amazing job. By the next weekend, all of those issues were fixed, and we don't often get this, but the same people who reached out to express concerns reach back out to express appreciation about how well the through traffic issues and other traffic flow and signage issues have been resolved. And I think it was a really good example of how all of the stakeholders who are here, we heard about iterative processes and learning as we go, are adjusting very quickly and have been extremely responsive to the issues that have come up. And Ms. Henn, you must have the best job title in Montgomery County government. Senior engineer for strategic innovation. But I do think that the fact that you've been given the latitude that you've been given here and all the hard work that you've done is great. And between the work that you've done on site and the rest of the team and what Parks have done, as we heard earlier, when we talk about pedestrian access and bike access, you don't know until you walk in the shoes and until you actually walk these areas. And the fact that DOT and Park and Planning are actually walking these areas and making the improvements, making sure that the access is there that is needed, I think it makes all the difference. And I really do think that has been a key part of the success of a lot of these efforts, and I know that they'll continue to be moving forward. Just a few questions here that we didn't talk about. One is the streetery in Bethesda. Part of that streetery is Norfolk, and Norfolk is planned, as a shared street, and this accelerated that process. And I'm very excited to prove the concept that has now been shown, as we've talked about. But I was wondering if DOT could provide an update on the facility planning study that's scheduled, and what lessons we've learned, and what have we taken from the positive feedback from the fact that we've closed off several blocks on that, and whether any changes will be incorporated into the recommendations, and whether or not there could be any acceleration to the study and the concept, given how much positive feedback that we've received thus far.
Councilmember Friedson, I'm at a loss to have any of that detail on me right now. What I'll do is have our engineering division compile some information and follow up with your office on that.
That'd be terrific. I just think that there's a tremendous opportunity here. We've aligned the forethought of the previous council and the urgency of the moment have now kind of perfectly aligned with where planning is, and I think we have an opportunity to think strategically, and I'm very hopeful that we can move that forward and make that permanent as it is planned to be. Separately on this, with Mr. Futrell, who's on the phone, but with Old Georgetown Road, the project underway, I'm very appreciative. Several folks and colleagues on the call have worked together on this, Delegate Corman and the District 16 team as well. But between the Beltway and Cedar Lane as part of the existing resurfacing project. When we were working on this project, this is where Jay Castle was killed. We've talked quite a bit on that. We've had a number of other serious collisions, several involving children, on key areas of this.
Sounding voice.
Yeah, I think it was not mine. I think it was. Yeah.
I thought you did that for effect.
Yeah. Anyway, and I appreciate we did the walkthrough, and SHA has been really responsive. Councilmember Glass, Councilmember Reamer were both part of the walk on Old Georgetown Road. Really excited about the improvements that we're talking about, but it's for a very short stretch. And to Ms. Daphnis's point about connectivity into the urban core, Delegate Corman and Mr. Petrell and I, we talked about a separate project that could potentially connect it, that was being studied from the end of the resurfacing project at Cedar all the way into downtown Bethesda, which would really create the type of safe transportation connectivity along Old Georgetown Road into downtown Bethesda, as Ms. Daphnis was describing, in several other areas around the county. I was just wondering if Mr. Petrell could speak to where that would be as part of this effort.
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Yes, basically, I am very thankful for the council for having me here today. I want to kind of say that I really support the open streets, the open gardening, and supporting the residents, the district, the council, and also the businesses. I really enjoyed some of the results from that. Being able to drive down on Georgia Avenue and Silver Spring.
Can you mute your computer?
So I'm very happy that that's going quite well.
Yeah, sorry.
In regards to Old Georgetown Road, I'm very happy, very pleased to share with the council that we expect to have a strike and prepare to open probably about the middle part of next month. And we do have the second portion of Old Georgetown from the Cedar down to Bethesda under study. And we are looking to see exactly what type of enhancements, improvements that we can actually do or render that will pick up from where we're going to leave off at the Cedar down to downtown Bethesda. Currently, that study is not done. It's still ongoing, but certainly it's in the play right now.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate the commitment to connect the first stretch with that final stretch. Hope you can give us and DOT an update as soon as you can, and really look forward to creating that type of connectivity as part of this broader effort. And to Emil, I look forward to hearing back on the Norfolk piece, because I do think there's tremendous opportunity to seize this moment and to match the planning that I think is really exciting with what we're doing right now and what we hope to do in the future. I think Dr. Orland wanted to respond.
Yes, I've looked it up. The Norfolk Avenue facility planning study is scheduled for fiscal years 22 and 23. So it'll be finished in about 3 years.
Yeah, I was asking if there was any lessons learned and updates based on that, if there's any opportunities to, if this remains, many of these closed streets are going to remain for an undetermined amount of time. And so I was just hoping you could take a look at it, that DOT could take a look at it and come back to us with any updates of, what we've learned and whether or not the timing is, going to stay or may change.
Emil, that probably goes to you.
Yeah. I think we're good. I think it was just reiterating the question. I appreciate Dr. Orland weighing in. I've also looked up, what it says on the paper. I'm kind of looking to see what's happening in the department and whether or not there's any updates on that, based on the fact that we are making significant temporary changes specifically to the stretch that is planned for facility planning. And so I just wanted to see if you've taken a look at that, wanted to raise it, look forward to you coming back to us on that. So appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, I've got Evan, and I have a question after Evan. If anybody else wants to speak, let me know.
Yeah, so real quickly, Christy, thank you for everything that you've been doing and the advocacy. I really appreciate it, and of course appreciating your comments, broadening out the scope of this conversation to a more holistic approach, which we all know we need. But for this particular conversation, I'm just going to narrow my questions more towards the streeteries and opening up some of these smaller places. But again, want to thank you for you and Action Committee for Transit and all the commissions. I can't even keep track of everything that you personally are a part of, so thank you in total. But for DOT, as we on the council continue getting requests for more of these types of street openings or closures, however you want to think about it, throughout the county, what are the criteria again for allowing these and facilitating these?
Hannah, can you speak to that?
Sorry, could you clarify, are you talking about restaurant, outdoor dining?
Yes.
Or, okay, so for outdoor dining, we have been working very closely with the regional service center directors. And a very important part of our approach has been ensuring that the small business owners want this to come, which is one reason we have not opened in Glenmont yet. So we really encourage any anyone who does not have a streetery but thinks that they have a location to reach out to us. We have our dedicated mcdot.sharedstreets email address. And Michael Paler, our division chief for traffic engineering, has really been taking the lead on identifying where we can safely put these in place. He is out there walking around in the field. He is working with SHA, and his team has really taken the lead on that. Now, in terms of the overall outdoor dining effort, that is being led by Tina Benjamin from the County Executive's Office. And we established ourselves very quickly, and we're now meeting on at least a weekly basis where we're sharing issues as they come up. That also involves the regional service center directors. It includes BOP and all of the different departments who are contributing to the effort. So as issues like, as we iterate, now we're hearing complaints about some noise in the streeteries in Silver Springs. We're trying to address, evening activity as we go, but really, I would say it's a flexible process, and we're just trying to respond quickly, and we are open to suggestions, and our traffic team is coming up with solutions.
Yeah, I'll tell you, so I think what you just said is really interesting, that clearly wanting to work with business owners that want to participate. And I think there's a lot to unpack there because, one, I'm curious as to why certain business owners might not want to participate. I'll tell you, I've had 2 restaurants in particular in Bethesda reach out to me saying, why were we not included, right? And if you look at a map, they're a few blocks away and you can understand, but they want in. And I'm curious if it is, a language difference, a demographic, a cultural, but I think even more broadly, for years and years, we have talked about changing our streets and the uses of those streets, and have been told that business owners wanted to maintain the parking meters, right, for turnover and for people to go in and out. And here we are rethinking all of this, and the business owners that might have once requested the parking meters are now saying, bring on the streeteries, right? And so I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned here and points to clarify, to build upon for future endeavors. But I can follow up with you offline. But I think we need to try and figure out why businesses don't want to participate, whether it is concerns real or otherwise, if that makes sense.
Councilmember Glass, if I can speak to that a little bit, and Councilmember Rice may have seen some of the feedback from one of the businesses up in Germantown. I can try to find that email and forward it over to you, their specific response. But, this is much easier to do where you have an established urban district that has an urban district staff that can go out there and tend to these tables and clean them, the shared tables. Some restaurants have dedicated tables for their use that they're serving meals to, as opposed to a shared table where you go in and get takeout, come out and eat it in the street. Germantown, Glenmont, places like that, those urban districts in waiting don't have that staff. The business owner in this particular case said, I can't bring in additional staff to tend to those tables if it's supposed to be my responsibility. So they felt that given the current economics, they're trying to balance their expenses of their business. And, if they were, I don't want to use the word forced, but had to participate in the management and, janitorial of those tables, it's a further burden on their business.
And I appreciate that. That does resolve a few questions in my mind to know that it's the additional onus or responsibility that's being placed upon them. That makes sense to me, especially when everyone's already on unsure footing right now and just wanting to sell food or sell anything else that they have in their shop. So thank you for this. Again, thank you to the chairs for organizing this conversation.
I would just like to add to Emil's response that we are we are doing a lot of outreach now and really trying to base our decisions on current responses from business owners. So, you know, when this first started, when we first started talking about shared streets, the immediate reaction of some was that restaurants will never want you to take their parking away. And just to be clear, that we are not making our decisions based on past assumptions. We're really trying to get current feelings and opinions from restaurant owners and businesses and people, and, you know, not relying on our past assumptions.
Well, and I'll just close just quick. That I think that is, again, one of the major takeaways here, that past assumptions are past. And this crisis has made us rethink a lot of the ways we work moving forward. So thank you.
Let me just, I've got Craig lined up. Let me just say, I didn't necessarily think we were going to be going in depth to the streeteries issues today. You know, we didn't invite Tina Benjamin to talk about that component of it. We can certainly talk about, you know, people can ask questions and we can talk about things, but we were somewhat more focused on the issue of creating like the greenways and you know, alternative, more transportation focus, I guess. I don't know, Tom, if that was your expectation as well. So I don't know that we want to get into depth about specific restaurant zones and how they might be treated here, because I don't know that we've invited the right executive branch staff for that. But that's an important issue, and you know, there's a lot we need to push forward with and resolve there. I wanted to ask about the bike lane network into Bethesda, and to tee off of Christy's comments about equity issues. You know, we have a lot of restaurant workers who need to get to their jobs, increasingly so, you know, and we have a lot of workers who are, you know, they're transit dependent. And I think transit is safe if you wear a mask and if everyone else wears a mask, but somebody may feel, you know, some may feel that they would rather bike. And this is the time when we ought to be also advancing, and I think that's really what we're talking about here, is advancing some of those key connections so that more people can, you know, start to bike safely if that's what they would like to do. So can you share with us about specifically the Bethesda bike loop, where we are with that, which I think should be part of this vision, and then you know, I guess any other update on additional advancing of bike infrastructure, you know, consistent with our vision in the Bikeways Master Plan.
Councilmember Reamer, I'm hard pressed to provide that. My focus for the last 3 months has really been on budgetary and scaling back operations and expanding operations now that the county will reactivate work sites. What I'll do is I'll ask Chris to follow up with you on that to help understand or provide you some information on those details. I just don't have those in my preparation for this meeting.
Okay, understand. Okay, Craig.
So just very briefly, when it comes to the concept, and I really want to thank Emil for commenting the way he did, because I think that this brings about, and so Hans, this is to a bigger point, when it comes to about urban districts and really having that support structure. That's the reason why Germantown has been exploring, looking at building a Germantown bid, is because of that. Having that flexibility and having that resource allows you to do these other kinds of things, right? And so it allows for folks to understand what the flexibility is in terms of having restaurants and their responsibilities. We've also had some challenges in that area with our folks who live there and hanging out in a lot of the areas that already are some of our tables. So again, it's internal structures to where having a business district would help to alleviate some of that, right? Having ambassadors that are out there on the streets and engaging with our folks in the community is one of the things that creates the balance. What we see in Silver Spring, what we see in Bethesda, those things are needed if you're going to pull something like this off. And so, you know, it's not something that I'm saying would never work or would never be able to happen. It's just under the current context of what we have in terms of our structure, it's just not the right fit. But I will say this, that I think as a whole, countywide, we need to continue to look at this from a number of different perspectives. I do agree with Councilmember Glass that as we look at the future and the evolution of what it is, we need to start designing streets that allow things like this to happen. I wish there were areas in certain cutouts of parts of Germantown Town Center that could be allowed to be blocked off. But I will just tell you, one of the things that I want to share with you that I saw yesterday evening as I was driving through that would create a tremendous impact in this area, but it's one of the things that we think about in terms of planning. So behind the Safeway is an access point where our trucks go for deliveries. They're 18-wheelers. Those 18-wheelers, that alley is too narrow for that truck to turn around, so they have to go through. So as that delivery truck, just last night as I was driving by, was waiting at the intersection to make a left to turn onto Century, that alone is something that nobody's talked about, but that delivery truck can't back up and go back onto Germantown Road. They have to go through. So if you were blocking off Century between Town Commons and Pinnacle, it would actually mean that you couldn't have delivery trucks access the Safeway, 18-wheelers, because they'd never be able to turn around. Or you'd have a huge amount of problems. I mean, trucks can back up, and so, you know, but it'd be a tremendous challenge as that's a thoroughfare for everyone normally. It would just create a nightmare. And so those are the logistics to where, from a planning aspect, I was a part of the Germantown Town Center board of directors when Germantown Town Center was first. And that's one of the biggest issues we had was that the streets weren't designed properly to allow for a lot of what we are envisioning right now. And so use this as future guidance for us from a planning perspective in terms of the allowance of things like this, because right now, Germantown Town Center is not conducive to a lot of the setup that we're looking at future-wise that I think will be, instrumental in a lot of folks going to that next level of having that walkable community that where you can actually have streets that are shut down. And so those are the small pieces that I think that we need to continue to think about from a planning aspect. And I think we had, I know I see Casey there. Yeah, so we have planning that's there. And so certainly something, Casey, I can follow up with you and talk with you in greater detail, but these are the kinds of things as we're planning communities that actually cause us to not be able to do things like this because, we've allowed for it to be structured in a certain way. So just wanted to put that out there because I think that helps us for future planning as a whole. It's not just specifically about street trees, but it's about everything that we want to do.
Thank you. All right, so let's review where we are here. We've gotten a briefing, Parks, and
belabor it too much, but I wanted to mention for Councilman Rice's benefit, I said earlier when you stepped out of the room, we're looking at things we can do in addition to just closing down streets to make space available in parks for people who want to eat out that we can use in a similar way to help support restaurants. And I think Germantown Town Center Urban Park is probably one of the best locations. So we're hoping to have something for you on that within the next couple weeks.
Thank you, guys.
Councilmember Reamer, I have one answer to your question on the biking in Bethesda, since some of our staff is watching this. The Bethesda Loop is scheduled to start construction this summer. Part 1 will be Bethesda Avenue and Woodmont Avenue beginning this summer, and I believe the streetery orientation may have to adjust slightly at that point in time when construction begins, and then the northern segments are in design.
Okay, so we've received presentations. Parks has done a terrific job closing down parkways. They're going to continue to evaluate and expand that. They're talking about making that permanent. That's big news. These are big changes. MCDOT has implemented a number of shared streets, greenways. This is pulling in the Bikeways Master Plan vision for greenways, and they're implementing the same, the streeteries and the closed streets in urban districts. Fantastic, incredible team working on that effort. And I really took note, Hannah, your comment about the number of people and the late nights. As a policymaker, sometimes it seems to me like, well, all you got to do is go out there, put some cones up, and you're done. And I know that's not really the truth, but so I appreciate what you said there, and I'm glad you showed the picture of the team. We got a lot of people working on this and doing a great job. And separately, we have the whole restaurants initiative. That we have a grant program. We have regional centers are working hard closely with DOT on that vision. And there's a whole lot we could get into there but we don't necessarily have everybody here for that. Let's hear about the greenways and which greenways are coming up next. What do you look down the road? Talk to us about the next 2 weeks, month. Where are we going from here? And again, I want to say this was also motivated by the coalition, the Open Streets Coalition, that has been working on these ideas and proposing to these to us. So we wanted to kind of convene this and bring some transparency to these efforts so the community activists can get a feel for all the work that's been going on. And want to call out the idea of the block, closing the block. That's terrific, and people need to know about that now. We got to get the word out. So today's meeting helps us to kind of share that. Like that's noteworthy. If you want to close a couple blocks in your neighborhood or more, just get your neighborhood together, and you can now file a permit request, and you can create your own loop. You can create your own neighborhood loop if you can get enough people together around that. It's an interesting way for neighborhoods to get involved and work together in this environment. And I think everybody's itching to get outside. We do have issues with people driving faster because the roads don't have as many cars in them, and that is a problem. So I think, the fact that you could create a slower street and have a family-friendly place for, kids to bike, to create a small loop in your neighborhood, that might be something that people would pioneer for us. So let's ask the community to think about those ideas and organize and come to us. It's hard for the county to look at a community as big as ours and say, well, let's put a loop in that neighborhood. That's not the process we want to create. We want the community to organize from the grassroots level up and say to us, we'd like to create a loop in our neighborhood. That option is available now. So our DOT has created the process for that to happen. We have community organizers working to model that. So let's hopefully we'll start to get the requests coming in and we can report back out. Hannah, can you talk to us about, and or Casey, can you talk to us about, what's down the road? Tell us more about what we should be expecting.
Yes. So to clarify, for the shared streets block permit, it is closing the streets to through traffic. It is not like a traditional block party where it's completely closed. So anybody who lives on that street or delivery people can still access it. That's an important part of that. But yeah, we really want to get the word out. What's coming next in terms of greenways, what you will see is slightly different from what we've put out there already. What we've done on Grove Street and on Holdridge Road have been kind of one stretch. And as I said, the reason we did those first is because we had projects that were existing and we could do it the most quickly. What the team has identified now, what you will see going forward, and I don't have specific locations to share, but I can tell you looking at density, access to parks and trails, existing infrastructure, activity centers, the areas that have risen to the top are Wheaton, Glenmont, Forest Glen, Silver Spring, and Tacoma Park. So those are the areas that we're looking to develop our next routes for connectivity. And what you should see in those areas once we're able to put them in place, which, ideally we're hoping within 2 to 3 weeks you'll be seeing more out there, that those will be different and that they will be more of connection pieces, so connecting to closed parkways, connecting to large apartment buildings, connecting, dense apartment building areas to an existing trail. And so you should see more connectivity coming from those next steps.
And is there a map or something overall? If someone says, hey, I'd like to take my family on a bike ride today, where would they go to find out which of these?
So right now for each of our initiatives on our website, we have a map of the location. So if you go to the Shared Streets website and expand upon any of the menus of areas you're interested in, we have PDF maps that our team is working on an interactive Google map that would put everything in one location. So I'm hoping to have that ideally this week, but we are actively working on that, started that last week.
That's terrific, an interactive Google map. So when we roll that out, then a person can, how would it work if you're a person with a phone?
You would go to our website, click on the map, and be able to scroll and zoom around on a Google map, and there would be different colors indicating different types of closures. We also are traditionally, when streets are closed, our Highway Services Department notifies Google Maps to divert drivers. We're actually putting some of our planning and engineering staff who are working on shared streets, we are connecting them with Google accounts so that they can quickly change navigation through Google Maps to identify these areas, route people around them, change things so that if you search Silver Spring Street Dine, it comes up in any Google Maps interaction.
Terrific. That sounds like that's going to be really useful. Look forward to, when it's time to roll it out, let us know, and I'm sure council members will want to advertise it and help the community find out about those opportunities. Okay, who would like to speak? I don't know if I have anyone in the queue at this point. Okay.
I can just say briefly, appreciate all the work that you all are doing. I saw this active in Silver Spring, and I saw some pictures of the Bethesda, and so I think I've seen people on the trails. So thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. I think it's working, and I know it's unprecedented, and we're figuring it out as you go, but you're doing a great job, and I will continue. We've gotten a couple of emails about a few suggestions, so I'll send that to everyone here so that you have them. But I just want to thank everyone for their work, and we're going to be in this situation for a little while, so I know we'll continue to improve. So thank you.
Thank you.
We are, and we want to. This could be a transformative moment. This might be a moment where we come out different on the other end, and we start looking at our road use a little differently, and people think about their I hope that people will continue to walk and bike as a recreational activity in their neighborhoods as much as they are now. Like, I see it a lot, and maybe people are just going to be building new habits, and we want to support that, if we can. So.
I agree. There's a whole movement around people putting a lot of good thought into building back better post-COVID. And, this is really, I think, an opportunity to accelerate and to highlight and move forward with a lot of the work that's already being done and has been done and is consistent with our long-term goals. It's consistent, obviously, with the Bike Master Plan, which the Planning Department did a great job on. It's consistent with the goals of the Pedestrian Master Plan, which they're currently working on, and consistent with our climate goals and Vision Zero and our health goals and many other things that we've been struggling to do for a while. There's not many good things coming out of this global pandemic, but the opportunity to move ahead with some of this work without some of the constraints that we've had when you have the traffic problems that we've had is nice to be able to test some of this stuff in a real life environment. Anyway, I'm grateful to everybody for doing the work prior to this and during this, especially to Christy and the whole advisory commission and the Open Streets Committee and everybody else. And I definitely want to thank DOT and and Parks and Planning, but also State Highway and Andre for being here and for their cooperation on the Silver Spring project.
Yeah, that was exciting. That was really great to see. Nice work on that.
I got it. It was unexpected to me. I'll be the first to say. When the proposal came to me, I said, well, maybe we can do this in county roads in Silver Spring, but State Highway won't ever go along with this. And sure enough, State Highway was enthusiastic right from the beginning. So thank you, Andre. It's been successful and popular, and we've only heard people asking to expand it. So thank you very much.
It's a new day. It's a new day.
We still need a crosswalk at Fenwick and Georgia while we're at it.
And Cornell and Old Georgetown.
Absolutely.
In so many other places.
Let's not
start. Et cetera.
But again, thank you, Andre. Thank you, State Highways. That was I think that was a marker of yet another marker of a new SHA, and it's really appreciated. And I think we want to just really thank all of the agencies and the community groups that are working together on this. We want to encourage you faster, more. Let's keep going. Don't slow down. And we're thrilled about it. We're excited. And thank you. You're doing a terrific job. Let's keep building on it. Okay, Mr. Hucker.
I had one question actually, DOT related, in SHA. As we continue going to reopening and traffic gets, you kind of addressed this, but as traffic increases and some people are starting to go back to work, could you just expand a little bit on what you're thinking about how this would proceed, and how you're thinking about that?
Councilmember Girondo, I think that's a great question. I think, we're kind of focused on the here and now and the needs that are in place right now. Trying to get through that, trying to adapt the streets to the current environment. Where we go from here is probably a big question. In several updates and briefings that I provided I don't really think we know what the new normal will be. We've been trying to encourage our staff, don't think you're all going back to the office like the old days. I think there's a new way of doing business, and right. We really don't have good projections or a comprehension of what businesses are doing, what the retail industry will look like at this point. So, our ride-on ridership was down about 75% on weekdays, about 66% on the weekends. How that's, we're starting to see recovery, riders come back, but to what degree, whether we'll get back to pre-COVID levels or not. Yeah. I think all of that right now is questions and things to be discussed and debated about.
Yeah. Councilmember Girondo, if I may, I think that's one of the things that we were trying to get at in our discussions with the Open Streets Coalition and others, is that while we are in the here and now, and it's imperative that we take care of the problems that are immediately in front of us. Look, we understand you all are dealing with, making sure there's enough hospital space and making sure that people are getting fed and all these other things. But, there will come a time where people will want to get back in their cars and go places because they're not comfortable on public transportation. And so we really wanted to drive home the point that we're at a point of unique opportunity right now in thinking about how do we actually change commuter behavior if there are opportunities to convert residents from using their cars into actually taking other alternative modes of transportation, running to work, biking to work, scooting to work, whatever it might be, to the extent that they do have to go into the office versus just hopping in their car because it's more convenient or they feel more comfortable.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think a lot of that's up in the air, as you said, as other, workplace practices change, when people go back, how they go back, how many days a week they go back. I know many businesses, if you're lucky enough to still be employed, are thinking about what remote working is going forward and expanding that. So I think there's a lot of factors, but I agree with you, Christy, that we are at a unique moment. So just wanted to plant that seed. Obviously, there's no perfect answer, but I think we all need to be thinking about that eventuality. So, thank you.
Andrew.
Yeah, I appreciate Chair Hucker's point about coming back better. I that was a way better way of saying it than I tried to say it earlier, but I just wanted to highlight that again.
Was it building back better?
Building back better?
Not my term, but there are smart people working on this. Yes.
Right, exactly. Anyway, I always say that my best ideas are never mine. So, this has proven, to Councilmember Jawana's point, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but this has proven that where there's a will, there's a way. There's so many people that have worked on this that we have figured out that it always seems impossible, and we come up with reasons why it's impossible, but it always seems impossible until it's actually done. And there's just so many examples through the Safe Streets, Shared Streets where we've gotten it done because of the hard work of DOT and parks and the advocacy of the community. And there's so much of a takeaway for moving forward for how we can address these issues. And I think, to the point earlier about, it's not just the transportation folks, it's ABS, it's permitting, it's the regional services centers, it's so many other areas of government, but we've blown through all of those silos and that bureaucracy and figured out by starting with, here's what we want to get done, we're going to figure out not, why it can't be done, but how it can be done. And, there's just so many other opportunities and so many other areas. I think that this is such a terrific model for things that we never thought we would do or could do that we're now doing. And yes, we may change it. Yes, the behaviors may adjust as we enter into the new normal post-COVID. But I really hope that on these particular issues of pedestrian safety and shared streets, but also just on broader issues of the way we do business in government, that we seize this moment and we really think about the model here and start with what is it we want to do and what is it that people are asking for, and figure out a way in order to make it happen. That's what clearly has happened here in so many different instances. And I think there's so much more opportunity to do it in so many other areas. And I hope we take advantage of that opportunity.
Terrific. Okay, well, we'll look for continuing implementation of these ideas. We're really happy about what we're seeing. People are really appreciating it. We're going to get Christy's comments. We'll ask for our agencies to review those, and we will continue to solicit new ideas and thinking. And we want to continue to expand the greenways. And I do think we need to take a special look at access to urban districts from outside, where workers, essential workers are going to be trying to bike more. Let's keep that equity focus front of mind here. And so we'll just ask MCDOT to please. I heard what you said about where you were looking next, and I think that's consistent with that approach. So we'll look to hear an update from you soon about what specific implementations you have there. All right. Well, great work, everybody. Thank you. This is a terrific, exciting moment. Lots of collaboration. I think it's a very collaborative enterprise. We've got, the community and the government agencies working together, and we're getting great results. So thank you. Thank you to my co-chair, Mr. Hucker, as well.
Thanks.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.